All right. Well, welcome everyone to the February edition of our InterReach webinar series. My name is Christine Glauber and I'm the host of our series today. We've got our second installment of our spring series on boundary spanning tools for research teams. And so it is with great pleasure that I'm going to just introduce our host for this spring series, Dr. Bethany Larson, who's going to frame today's exciting talks for us and introduce our speakers for today. So thank you so much, Bethany, and take it away.
Great. Thank you, Christine, and thank you, InterReach, for providing this virtual and figurative platform for communal learning. I am Bethany Larson, and I am an independent consultant with Larson Evaluation and Design, LLC. And by day, I am Assistant Dean at the Graduate School for Michigan State University. So I have been given the privilege to host and organize this spring webinar series on boundary spanning tools for research teams. Boundary spanning is all about what we do here in InterReach. We are learning to be the arrows. We're meeting a need in this series to get really specific, really tangible, and hands-on. So we've designed this series with at least 4 different ways for you to guide your own learning. So one is obviously showing up here today, where you can have live interactive learning. We're going to have hands-on demonstrations from each of our presenters. A second way is if you now can go to our new growing inventory of the tools that have been and are being presented in this series, and Christine will drop the link to that in the chat. A third way is for you to record your own learning journey in the DIY boundary spanning field notebook. And Christine can also drop that in the chat. And then of course you can sit and passively absorb the knowledge that's shared in today's webinar. So we are excited. I'm excited to host two tools, but 3 presenters today. And I will first introduce Anne Heberger Marino, who is the founder of Lean-To Collaborations, a consultancy focused on creating conditions for highly effective collaboration across disciplinary boundaries. Prior to founding her own company, Anne was a senior program director for the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine for 12 years. Anne has been active in the science of team science community since 2010 and is currently the membership chair for one of our home organizations. We are InterReach is a SIG within the International Network for the Society of Team Science. Follow Anne on Twitter at Lean-To Collabs. And without further ado, I will let Anne teach us about the Presidency Institute's 4 levels of listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Bethany. I am really excited to be part of this series and this community because all of you have been an amazing bright light in my professional life and in my career. So I'm always more of a behind the scenes person. And when you have good colleagues and good friends, they will encourage you to get out in front, which is what Christine and Bethany and Christine have done for me. I would like to start by maybe even sharing my slides because that would be a really good thing to have. Christine, can you make me host real quick?
Yep.
Did you see that? Yep, I got it. Great, thanks. Yep. Beautiful. There we are. Okay, here we are, listening as a tool for leadership in life. Because we are a community and this is about listening, I thought I would invite everybody to listen together in a way that we might not usually do on Zoom. So I'm going to invite you to settle, be present, recognize that we are a part of a community. And even though we're in different places right now, we are very much connected. So while you settle and come in, I am going to provide some restful music for a minute. All right, now we're all here. Like Bethany said, we are the bridge builders here at InterReach. And it's probably pretty safe to say that the world needs us bridge builders more now than maybe ever before. We're also the foundation makers, which is the less glamorous part of being the bridge builders, because the bridges cannot stand unless they're built on a strong foundation. So today, what I'd like to suggest is that we can use our own human capacities for listening and intention to build a foundation for collaboration and strong dialogue and understanding each other in new ways. So what I'm going to share today is a very simple tool that has some very special features. It will not cost you any money. You have it with you wherever you go. It does not cost hardly any time at all to do. And you can do it on the fly. No one will know what you're doing. And after practice, they may think you have some sort of secret agent powers of attention and conversation. So we all know that simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. And this is not always easy practice. If you've ever gone, had a friend encourage you, come to my yoga class, it's easy. And then they try downward pretzel and it doesn't feel quite so easy. Even if bodies have the capability of doing this, our own individual bodies in training may not in that particular moment. Bethany gave me a wonderful introduction, so I'll just put how to spell all that up on the screen for an instant. I live in Brunswick, Maine, which is settled on the traditional territory of the Wabanaki Confederacy. And I recognize and honor the current tribes who comprise the Wabanaki Confederacy. They are the Penobscot, the Passamaquoddy, the Maliseet, and the Micmac peoples who have stewarded this land for generations. I respect their traditional values and affirm their inherent sovereignty to this territory and support their efforts for land and water protection, restoration, and cultural healing and recovery. The star is roughly where I live. So today's agenda is just to give you a little background on how I got to be doing this type of work and how I found out about the Presencing Institute. Apparently my slides aren't going to move anymore. There we go. And we'll go through the 4 levels of listening. And we will give some ideas on how you can practice this. So again, Bethany gave me all the introduction. I've talked about NACV and the work that I did at the academies at Science and Team Science conferences before. The book Collaborations of Consequence is available free from National Academies Press as a PDF. And that tells you everything that we did there. The main thing that's important for our conversation today is really just that we did things very differently there. So it wasn't like a typical workshop. This is what we might call in our community a boundary-spanning object that was created at one of our conferences. I cannot tell you exactly what this was. I'm sure it was intellectually rigorous and very important to the team who created it. But part of what we did differently is that we were a little team that really thought a lot about being a learning organization. And that exploration was how I found out about Theory U. And it turns out 2014, thank you Amazon ordering for being able to tell me when I first ordered the book. I got the original edition of this out of the library and read it voraciously in about a week. And then wound up buying the actual version. And in about 2015, the Presencing Institute started doing a massively online open course, a MOOC, on edX. And I was one of the first cohort of people to go through that. And they're very much a global organization. They have tens of thousands of people who have been a part of their programs. They work with the United Nations Development Program and organizations around the world. So I've been involved in their work for a long time. And every time they offer ULab is what they call it on edX, I've gone through it, and almost every time. I've done it 3 times, and it's 12 weeks each time. A core piece of the Presencing Institute's way of thinking about the world is that we need to move from an ego system awareness to an ecosystem awareness. And This image is my rendering of one that you can find online. It goes all over the place, but this is really the ecosystem. Is that here we are, human beings, especially white and European and male, at the top, and everything else is sort of really there to support us and our number one status on the planet. And an ecosystem awareness, which comes out of ecology, is that we're all kind of in this bubble together. And the Presencing Institute goes a little bit further, I think, in that not only are we all in this together, but it's really recognizing the inherent interconnectedness of all of this. So that's sort of the ground of where this listening practice comes out of. One of the things that you hear a lot in the Presencing Institute is the phrase, I attend this way, so it emerges that way. And the idea is that how we show up in the work that we're doing actually matters and has an influence on the kinds of results that we are able to create. This isn't that different from the garbage in, garbage out that we hear in data. It's just a positive version of that, which is, positive intention and good-heartedness will lead you to a different place, a better place than not. So here's our person who's going to be joining us. I like to do things in teams, and since we can't experience these things completely in breakout groups, we don't have enough time for that. I've brought some friends to help us. So here's our person, and the way that she's going to attend to the world is with all of who she is, and we will create a greener world that way. So to help us think about listening, I would like to invite you to get a piece of paper. This is another of the Presencing Institute tools that they use a lot, which is called guided journaling. And get a piece of paper and a pen, or if you just want to do it digitally, that's fine too. And I'd like you to think about a time when you felt really heard and listened to by another person. This could be from this morning at breakfast. It could have been 20 years ago on your grandmother's lap. Any time in your life that you experienced this. Write a little bit about that experience, who you were with, and what they did for you in that moment. And kind of, if you can, feel how that felt in yourself, in your body. What did they offer to you that helped you feel really listened to? And if you can, also think about how you felt before that conversation and how you felt afterwards. Okay. So if anybody would like to, you could put your before/after into the chat. And that can be a way of us to kind of collect how it can feel to be in a conversation that has the potential to shift how we're doing and how we're feeling. So this is where those 4 levels of listening come in. I've adapted the slides that the Presencing Institute uses in their training, but it's all Creative Commons license, so it's okay. So this first level of listening is we're listening from our habitual patterns. And what this really looks like to me is autopilot listening. Like we're just kind of going through. And there's not much changing in terms of our attention. We're just there. I think we all probably know what this is like. It kind of looks like this. My favorite, bunny rabbits. We've got one ear up, one ear down, possibly only catching half of what's going on. These are our friends that are going to be having a conversation, and we're going to watch their conversation. And I'm going to try to illustrate how this looks if we could animate the quality of listening. So here they're having their conversation, And at the level 1 listening, the focus of our listener here in the pink is mostly on herself. She's confirming what she already knows, her own opinions and judgments. So it's kind of like she's operating inside her own bubble. And he's talking, but really not all of what he's going to say is going to get through. All that's getting through is what she already knows, which in my illustration is he's saying something about leaves and sunshine. She's completely missed the ground and the landscape that he's talking about. So the level 2 is that we're listening for facts here. And in this place, we've kind of opened our minds. We're willing to have a dialogue and hear some new information about what somebody else may have to say. So we're moving from sort of our own place to suspend judgment and hear someone else's point of view. So in here, she's also focused on him and his perspective. And so they're able to share a lot of different things in this level of back and forth. It tends to be a place where it's open for debate, and there can be some conflict, which we know is part of our practice. Certainly working through conflict. I think that's coming up in a later series, right, Bethany, that we're going to be working with conflict. So a third level, and this is sort of where it might get a little different, is empathic listening. And in this place of listening, we're listening with our hearts as well. So it's not just our minds engaging, we're opening our heart and we're trying to see through someone else's eyes. We're kind of suspending our cynicism about the world a bit. And we're really touching into what might be called compassion. Another way of thinking about this would be perspective taking. So that's what this looks like here. Her focus now is on her conversation partner, and her heart is open and engaged in this process. It's also a case where in order to see someone else's perspective, I have to dim mine a bit and let go of my own position. When you think about the phrase, put yourself in someone else's shoes, if you were actually going to do that, the first thing you have to do is take off your own shoes. So here she's, emotionally taking off her own shoes to understand what's going on with this other person. And so they're seeing kind of the same thing happen together. So she's hearing his story. Level 4 listening is generative listening. And this is a place where we're bringing in all of who we are to what's happening. People who are good, really good generative listeners are what they come to mind. Facilitators can be amazing at this. Anybody who's a professional coach, really strong mentors. I think grandparents have generative listening powers. We can probably all think of someone who has this ability to really be with a moment and what's happening that's kind of bigger than what's happening on the surface. And so here there's a bit of a shift in identity where this is like our best selves showing up. And we're also kind of bringing out, seeing the best potential in the other person that we're talking to. So for our friends here, she's got her heart involved in this. They're still talking about this landscape that he's sharing. But what's also happening here is they're connecting what's happening in their conversation to this larger web of the ecosystem that we are all part of, being a part of the planet. That gets, sometimes that feels a little woo-woo for people. But if you think back to the conversation that you remembered and feeling listened to, there is kind of something a little bit transcendent about, wow, I never saw it that way, or wow, I didn't see myself that way. If you've had a best friend or a good mentor who sees the very best in you in a way that you can't see it in yourself, that's kind of what's happening at this level of listening. And in this case, they've both come out changed in some way. Part of why I'm presenting these levels of listening to you is that being a part of groups who understand this framework and are listening in this way or trying to practice in this way has really helped me overcome isolation and Zoom fatigue. This also relates to levels of conversation that are possible. So in level 1, our conversation, we're just talking nice, right? This is, you can sometimes feel this in people that you'd rather not be talking to, but you can't avoid. We're not really going for any sort of connection here, and it's very much a business as usual kind of operation. So at level 2, you can get into some debates which is often me versus you thinking. We can be really in debate. We're really stuck in our positions there. And in dialogue, there's a bit of give and take and reframing that's happening. And then at level 4, you've got a collective inquiry, which is really we're all in this together and we're trying to see and understand what's happening in a different way. So that was a very quick overview. But if anybody wants to put in chat what level of listening they thought might have been happening in the memory that you journaled about. I'm going to bet it wasn't level 2 or level 1, maybe level 2. Yeah. Okay, so there's at least some 4, so at least 2 people have some idea of what we're talking about here. Yeah, level 3 and level 4 is kind of where things get juicy and interesting in conversation. It's definitely not this, which is what my mother accused me of, which is things go in one ear and out the other. So just a quick recap of our friend here. Level 1 listening, we're really listening from our head up. And in level 1, we're in our own bubble. Level 2 listening, we're outside of our bubble. Level 3, we're bringing in our heart. And level 4, this is like hokey pokey, we got our whole self in. And we're going to stay in that. So then how do we practice? We're going to pause real quick. You don't have to consider everyone all the time when you're doing this. So that was number 1. You don't have to do this all the time. Number 2, be very gentle with yourself. This is a case where, when someone's coming to visit, all of a sudden you realize that your rug is shabby and the kitchen needs being done, and this isn't quite right, and everything feels just wrong. Please don't do that to yourself with this. When you're paying attention, it often feels like it's getting worse. And just keep trying, keep practicing, because no one's going to know. Like if you're trying to listen well and you realize I didn't pay attention, no one knows. Just be very gentle, like a butterfly in your own hand. So we're not going for perfection or achievement. There's no finish line and there's no goal. This is how it looks in practice. This is my artistic rendering of a conversation that might have happened. We're bopping all around into these levels. And so the pink is our actual paying attention to how we're listening. It comes and goes. And that's okay. Now, there's a few different ways you can kind of practice this yourself. The Presencing Institute, if you sign up on your site, they have an they have a daily assessment, which they use in the edX courses. And for me, I found trying to remember how well I listened over an average day was really impossible by the time I came to fill this out. It can be really helpful though, because if you do it multiple times, it'll track your level of listening and it gives you the opportunity to reflect on a time that there was a change. What worked for me was setting an intention in my calendar. And here I've decided to pay attention, reminded myself that I want to pay attention during my lunch date, my Zoom with my dad, when I'm hanging out with Bethany on Thursday. I'm not really hanging out with Bethany on Thursday, but if I were, I would want to be listening to her, and in family game night. I'm not worried about paying attention in dull meeting. Why are we meeting? Staff meeting and another meeting. So you can decide when you want to use this. Another opportunity, if people are interested in doing this in an interactive place with other people who are all trying to do this, there's a case clinic coaching circle process that the Presencing Institute uses. For me, I find this to be a really amazing experience where each person is sharing something that's going on in their world, and all the rest of us are there to practice deep listening and help them reflect and see their situation in new ways. So more information on this is at the Presencing Institute website. I've given you one of their zillion tools. They have a lot of them. And also InterReach, with which Bethany and Christine have talked about. We're going to be collecting all of these things, and you can always reach out to me as well. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anne, for giving us a little taste through our memories of what listening could be like and a vision of where we can go in the future. I really appreciated your tracing of the reality of the ups and downs, and that our attention can also come and go in these places. We have time for a couple of questions before we transition to our next tool with Iris and Merel. If you have a question, you can drop it in the chat or go ahead and raise your hand.
I can jump in for questions.
Sure, thanks, Merel.
Yeah. I was wondering, working with researcher, how do you bring them to that level of listening? Because they are really often thinking about so many things at the same time, and just try to bring them at the moment. Do you have any clue for us to bring them to truly listening?
Yes, thank you. It's such a good question. And I think it's something we face a lot is, sometimes things go a little off the rails, and how do we put people together? One of the ways that can work is really to be very reflective and just stating what you think you see and asking for clarification. Sometimes that can just be enough to say, it sounds like we're not listening to each other very well. Could we maybe think about clarifying this position and put it on a wall? A lot of this is very much facilitation kind of skills of reflecting what you see, asking the group, and just really slowing it down a bit. Does that help?
Yeah, sure. But I think it's from a person to another, the challenge would be well, unique. It's when you are working with a diverse community, it's a challenge itself. But I'll pay attention to it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and Stephanie is saying, there's resistance to anything that feels fluffy. And one of the things I caught that Bethany put in, she shared in the on the InterReach listserv, is that after in the after party from the last webinar, Elizabeth mentioned that our community could stand to draw from the really deep body of research on mindfulness and consciousness studies. And there is hugely solid empirical research being done that says methods like this can transform groups. They shift how people work together. And that is a very robust body of knowledge. They're MRI studies and control trials and things like that. So that some of that, the other thing is, if people don't want it, they don't want it. And that's okay. It's not for everybody.
Thank you so much, Anne, for recognizing realities and pointing us to future, to other options as well. I see Elizabeth on the call today. And so Elizabeth, if you want to drop some links to that empirical research on mindfulness, we welcome that. We'll post later to the InterReach listserv. And then we welcome continued conversation on the InterReach listserv for those who are trying to struggle with the question that Marie-France asked about how do you move into these deeper levels with researchers who are often pulled in so many directions. So thanks, everyone. I'd like now to introduce two new voices to the InterReach community. They're coming to us from the Netherlands. I'm happy to introduce Merel van Goch, who's assistant professor at the liberal arts and sciences at Utrecht University. And her work is driven by the motivation to provide people with the optimal circumstances for learning. She is passionate about teaching and learning. She uses quantitative and qualitative methods to study interdisciplinary education and metacognition, creativity, and motivation of students in higher education. Her colleague, Iris van der Tuin, is professor of theory and of cultural inquiry at Utrecht as well, and is also director of the School of Liberal Arts. As a researcher, Iris contributes to the new and interdisciplinary humanities and to the scholarship of interdisciplinary teaching and learning. She recently initiated the Creative Humanities Academy, an infrastructure for collaboration between academics and creative professionals, and for consultancy on humanities theories, methodologies, and pedagogies. You can also follow them on Twitter. without any further ado, I would like to hand the screen and airtime over to Iris and Merel.
Thank you so much, Bethany, for your fantastic introduction. And I think I'm speaking on behalf of Merel also when I say that I'm very happy to be here. And actually, we represent quite a large and growing community at Utrecht University of scholars, students, teachers, policymakers, all around the issue of interdisciplinarity. And we're going to present a pressure cooker tool here today. Merel, are you sharing the screen? Maybe I
make Christine a message to give me the.
I just made you a co-host,
co-hosting.
Merel.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to present a pressure cooker tool that introduces participants to the challenges of interdisciplinary research by guiding them through Repko and Szostak's interdisciplinary research process in 60 to 90 minutes. So here we have only 30 minutes, or 25 actually, so we can only show you and work with you on just like one aspect of it. We developed this pressure cooker in 2017 for a workshop at the National Interdisciplinary Research Education Conference, and we did this because this was the first National Interdisciplinary Education Conference, and we really wanted to show the other Dutch participants how you can, together with students, build this bridge from multidisciplinarity to interdisciplinarity. And we developed the pressure cooker together with 2 students and an educational consultant, and that probably shows you that, you know, we really try to develop tools and ways of collaborating together with together with students in this case, because this we use the interdisciplinary research process primarily with students. At this point, we use the pressure cooker in our own teaching in order to kind of give the students, the bachelor students in liberal arts and sciences, a very quick introduction to interdisciplinarity. And we also use it in all kinds of consultancy kind of assignments that we do both nationally and internationally. Yes, I guess this is enough about the context of the pressure cooker. So what we do, and some of you will know this, Merel, if you can go to the next slide, some of you will know that the step-by-step model of interdisciplinary research that Repko and Szostak present in now the 4th edition of their book, Interdisciplinary Research. It consists of 10 steps and 3 phases. So the first phase consists of a research setup in which you, for example, define your problem area, justify your interdisciplinary approach, defend the relevance of certain disciplines when it comes to the question that you're asking. And then there is the phase of the disciplinary foundation. So that's, for those of you who don't know, the key to interdisciplinary research, according to Repko and Szostak, is that you really work from within and with the disciplines. So the second phase consists of conducting a thorough literature, actually research project and an analysis of the disciplinary knowledge and insights that you found, and also an evaluation thereof. And then importantly, there's the phase of integration, in which you try to find common ground using several integrative techniques and develop a more comprehensive understanding, after which you reflect on, evaluate, and communicate the results. And of course, when you want to introduce either students or colleagues to something like this, and you have 60 to 90 minutes to spend, you have to narrow down. So our pressure cooker consists of 3 steps only, and we use material from our students in order to introduce either students or colleagues to this process and allow them to kind of experience a little bit what the challenges of interdisciplinary research are. So the 3 steps we use in the pressure cooker are: participants get to read an introduction and formulate an interdisciplinary question. They get to study data management tables, so really the insights and the concepts from 3, in this case, disciplines, and they get to experience the integration phase of the insights that they're presented with. And then there is a 3rd phase of reflection. Merel.
Thanks. Yes, so we were asked to reflect on the pressure cooker in a certain way. So what are modifications that you can do when you want to make such a pressure cooker yourselves, suitable platforms and cautions when you're using this. So in terms of modifications, there's a lot you can do. So we, as Ines explained, we have translated actual work from students in our Introduction to Interdisciplinary Research course. And so our pressure cooker is on the topic of altruism, but of course you can have, you can do this on any topic that is relevant, as long as it's interdisciplinary. Other simple changes are using different disciplines. In our case, we use philosophy, psychology, and biology. You can modify the duration of the pressure cooker. So usually we do it in 60 to 90 minutes, but we've also one time done it in a week. If you add additional elements, for example, a more in-depth disciplinary self-reflection that I have here on the right side of the screen, where participants reflect on what is my discipline, what are the core elements of my discipline, so what methods does my discipline use, what concepts are important in my discipline, what theories, what assumptions, and the epistemology, for example. And then combined, that's your disciplinary perspective. And so that's a really powerful thing for participants to reflect upon. You can also take some things out and make it even shorter. I've done it a couple of times in 30 to 45 minutes with students, and then we don't really use the case on altruism that much, but we do go through all the steps. Yeah, so suitable platforms, we've done this first always in person, but now that we're all working remotely, we've also done it virtually, like we're going to do today. Some cautions. So yeah, how can the tool go wrong? A couple of things. I think the most difficult part of it is the integration, like Ines already said. We see that sometimes participants have some trouble with trusting themselves or trusting the case that they get from us. So they will get data management tables. And one time I was doing this in a graduate level course, and then I saw that the students were looking up the sources in the data management table. So that's not what the pressure cooker is about. Also trusting the teammates, correcting the work that the teammates did or checking what they did. So you can really see that the pressure cooker works both on the content level, because they really quickly learn the interdisciplinary research process, but also on the level of interpersonal and intrapersonal competences. We've also one time, when we did this with lecturers, they started questioning interdisciplinarity per se, and also the integrative techniques that we use in the last step. So that was also defeating the purpose of the pressure cooker. So those are a couple of things that can go wrong. Yes.
Yes. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to focus on that first phase of our pressure cooker, because we thought that was the most suitable for the time we had available. So you will be sent to breakout rooms in just a minute, and you will get to read the altruism case study. First, you read it individually and you try to actually answer or respond to our question, which is formulate a suitable interdisciplinary research question based on what you've read. So you will have to read one page, and the page ends with something like, this leads us to the following interdisciplinary research question, and you will have to fill in the question. And of course, there are no right or wrong answers, but there are some guidelines that we always provide in the pressure cooker for what are the ingredients of a suitable interdisciplinary research question. And we always talk about this issue on two levels. So when do we need interdisciplinary research, and what are the characteristics of an interdisciplinary research question? So when do we need interdisciplinary research? This is all familiar for you. I think the issue is complex. It has different components that each have a disciplinary character. Two or more disciplines have an important insight into the issue. No single discipline has been able to solve the issue. The issue is at the crossroads of disciplinary insights, and the issue is an unsolved societal problem. And I hope that you will see that the issue that was picked by the students whose work we translated is complex, etc. And then there are the characteristics of an interdisciplinary research question. So the question should be researchable, doable in time and scope. It should be open-ended, so not a yes or no question. Well formulated in everyday language, because you have to talk across disciplines. So it should be disciplinarily neutral, no jargon, and no personal bias. So these are quite some difficult, these are some characteristics that make the task quite difficult and challenging, but this is precisely what we wanted to, communicate in a way with the pressure cooker. So just to sum up, you will get to be sent to a breakout room, read the case study that you find there, and try to formulate a suitable interdisciplinary research question individually, and then as a group. You will have some time, hopefully, to also compare notes, and then you will get sent back to this main room.
Yeah, so the case study you will find in the Google Doc, and Christine will put the link in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we will go into the breakout rooms for 5 minutes, and then we will come back.
Have fun.
And I am going to push the button now. If you have troubles, you'll stay here in the room and we can get you sorted out.
All right, so are people back? I can't see it here because I'm sharing my screen.
Yes, they're back.
Yeah. Okay, great. Welcome back. I hope you had fun in the breakout room, and I hope you came up with really good interdisciplinary research questions. Feel free to share your question that you came up with as a group in the chat. We're really curious to see what you came up with. And in the meantime, while you're doing that, I'm going to the next slide. So if you would now be in our real pressure cooker, we would go to the next step, which would be the integration step. So we would give you these data management tables, and you would be asked to integrate the insights that are found. So we would be working not from the question that you just came up with, but from the question, how can we explain altruism within a society? Because that's what our students did, on which we based this pressure cooker. So in the pressure cooker, as you know, we have the disciplines biology, psychology, and philosophy. You would be getting one data management table per discipline, and you would be asked to find concepts that are in here, find insights, find theories, assumptions, phenomena, and try to integrate them using integrative techniques that can be found in Repko and Szostak's book. So here are some examples of integrations that we've seen in the past. And on the right is the integration from the very first time we did this pressure cooker at the National Interdisciplinary Education Conference. There you see reward as one of the main outcomes, as the more comprehensive understanding. And on the left, sorry that it's in Dutch, but this was the original integration that our students came up with in the course. And they focus on, like, for example, tragedy of the comment, pride, society, moral, ethics, empathy, fitness. So very interesting that and this is actually one of the main points we want to stress using this pressure cooker, is that you can always come up with different conclusions based on the people who are in there, based on the disciplinary backgrounds of the people in the pressure cooker. So here is our contact information if you have further questions or you want to contact us, and also a link to the website of our research group, Subjects in Interdisciplinary Learning and Teaching, or SILT, which is how we call it. And now we have some time for Q&A. And I will stop sharing my slide.
Great, thank you very much, Iris and Merel. Wow, we just did a pressure cooker version of the pressure cooker. I hope all of us, I think it's aptly named, right? So I'm sure there's lots of questions and wonderings, and I encourage you to write those down. Those are legitimate questions, and to, again, like post them in the chat, reply to our listserv. But we do have time to get maybe one question out on the table.
There's a question in the chat: who is responsible for creating the data management tables? So in real life, kind of our students do this. So they represent their own disciplinary specialization in an interdisciplinary research project. And they have to really kind of come up with the most important literature and fill in these tables. And we basically just simply copied existing tables for this pressure cooker. And we asked the students, what is, for you, according to you, an exemplary interdisciplinary project? And they came up with this one because it represents the humanities, the social sciences, and the natural sciences. And in the pressure cooker, you would, like, the participant would simply get assigned a discipline. So, you know, one becomes the biologist, the other the philosopher, and then there is a psychologist. So this is how we work.
Thank you.
Yeah, so in those data management tables, the students list sources they have found in their literature search, and they list the insights or the scholarly opinions in that source, assumptions that are in there, theories, concepts, and other important terms.
Great question. Again, we're getting down to brass tacks in this series. How do we actually implement these? I look forward to heading to your site for your research group, and maybe there are actually more little case studies that we can use and just grab and go and try a pressure cooker with our teams, Iris and Merel. You know, everyone, the theme of today's session number 2 was tools for building team cohesion. Anyone have any thoughts about how these tools might contribute to team cohesion or not?
I guess I could offer it. I think they both offer sort of some mental scaffolding for people to use in their teams to kind of acknowledge the meta level fact that you're doing work by spanning disciplines. And so you're trying to find a map to either how to hear each other in acknowledgement of the fact that there is a disconnect, or how to build toward a connect. So I thought they both could help in cohesion. Really excellent.
Any other insights, thoughts?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'd recently gotten a question from the new executive director of the National Postdoc Association, and we're kind of potentially digging into this question of power dynamics and what happens when something goes wrong. And what I'm wondering is, in this interdisciplinary work, even when you have a construct and you might be thinking intellectually at the same level, what about the power dynamics? Because those can go pretty sideways. And I would think that you're still going to have that differential of power in these interdisciplinary groups.
Yeah, if I may answer that, I think it's a very important question that you're raising. Of course, it's something, it's one of the challenges that hopefully, you know, comes up in the reflection phase, because I think what we maybe didn't kind of end with is that after the work with the data management tables and after the integration, there's this third step of trying to reflect on what the participants experienced. And sometimes questions like your question come up. So they experience difficulties also on the level of, you know, maybe differences between how disciplines are valued and stuff like that. And of course, yeah, whether this pressure cooker is going to help in the real life, very difficult and tricky kind of interdisciplinary situations, we see this as just the first step.
Thanks, Iris. Anne, I'll hand you the last word.
I was actually just noticing something that Merel had just put in the chat about how she gave the tables from philosophy and psychology to the biologists, and they still came up with a solution that is 100% biology. And I think that's a part of what this empathetic level of listening is trying to get to, is can I make that leap and the stretch to see that there might be someone who could possibly see this differently, and that could be valid. Not even validating it, but just to say it could be valid. One of the groups I'm working with right now, they're bridging arts and sciences and humanities. And they have a very strong basis of listening well to each other and pointing out when gently, the butterfly in the hand of when they're not feeling listened to. And it does help them make sure that they're mixing all three of the perspectives together.
Thanks, Anne. I feel challenged to continue deepening my listening as well and making sure I'm not the biologist who just comes up with biology when presented with alternative perspectives. Thank you, everyone, for a whirlwind lunch hour, at least over here on the eastern coast of the United States. We look forward to another session number 3 of the series in a month. I believe that ends up being, oh gosh, I don't know. It's the second Tuesday of March. It's always the second Tuesday of the month at noon. Please refer to the schedule on the InterReach website, subscribe to our listserv, continue chatting in between as we develop our learning community. Christine, anything else?
Nope, just to say it's March 9th, and thank you to Anne, to Merel, to Iris, and to Bethany for putting this together. And thank you all for being a part of this today. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you for organizing.
Thanks
you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anne. Bye.